Hello, I'm Jamie off of Cumbria Woodlands,
And I'm Carrie from Cumbria Woodlands.
and we are doing a talk about Ancient Woodlands. Yippee! So, that's a very good start. Right. So, yes, the woodlands, I guess, around the world. Some of them are very old, and we in Cumbria have some nice ancient woodlands. So, what they mean by ancient is it'll be sort of has been established for 400 years or more. So when you go into a wood, you can sometimes see different trees, like your broadleaf trees and your conifer trees, and then the fashion these days is to have lots of very small trees, like we can see out there, that'll then become a woodland. And that sort of is a new woodland, but the older ones have been there for a long time and have sort of habitats and things that go with that. So we have a slide here which shows a bit of an ancient woodland. Lots of tall drawn up oak trees on there, and I guess they're sort of quite wriggly up the top, and that's sort of how nature will do it in a way. But also this one will have been managed in the past, so there's lots of sort of straighter stems at the bottom, and no doubt it will have been cut, and these trees will have come back. So but there will be, I guess, advantage in the long-lived woodland. So you've got flora and things, and then your older trees. They're maybe not that old, but they'll be older than us. And then that also helps with the soil that's been there for a long time. And then you get a bit of archaeology, which can sort of hint back to whether it's an ancient wood or not. So yes, that's that first bit. But we'll have a look at this next slide. Conifer. Well, it's quite a handy thing. So a lot of the ancient woods were cut down and planted with the conifers, thanks to the good old Forestry Commission here. Well done, good idea, because there's a bit of a demand for product quite quickly, and around the turn of the wars and things, a lot of these older woodlands were felled and planted with conifer instead, and that's grand, but you sort of have to force a bit more management because it grows up quicker, and yeah, I guess you've still got to keep going with that, and maybe some areas were felled off that should perhaps have been kept for a bit longer for the sake of ecology, etc. But then we need timber, so we're the second biggest importer of timber in the world after China, so we use a lot of wood in the UK. So yeah, and that was part of the reason in terms of we had to get some things growing. So this is a sort of a nice stand of trees. But you can maybe just make out, Carrie found this one, but in here there's a big green canopy of a broadleaf tree within these very tall spindly conifers. And to a point, I guess, there are the threats to the ancient woodland that older sort of native tree in a way is being outcompeted by these conifer species. And eventually one day that might die. So thinking about the management of the ancient woods, you've got to try and sort of look after those older features. And one day they might turn into the veteran trees or the older trees like this one here, and they can get quite big. So that's my son there in the bottom, inside a hollowed out tree. Yeah, it's a big tree. But yeah, I guess it's just about giving things a chance to carry on growing, and I guess a lot of the time you go into a wood and think, oh, it's just a woodland, is it ancient or not? Maybe you wouldn't just know, but you don't see these big old trees necessarily in the wood, but they can be there, they can be hiding. So a little bit on to flora. I guess the reason your ancient woods are sort of particularly important is you get the flora sort of associated with that, which wouldn't otherwise grow elsewhere. So once you've cleared off a woodland and turned it into pasture like we stood on, you don't get any of these. Well, you maybe do at the edges, but not so much in the grassland and things itself. And trying to get that back is quite a difficult thing. And do you want to get it back? Well, maybe we, as humans, we're not so bothered. We seem to like grass, but it's nice and clean and neat. But if you're a little bug or an invertebrate or something that's living in the woods, you're probably quite partial to some of these things. And I don't know, this herb Paris that's, well, I'm pointing at it here, but I'll go over here. There's a bit of herb Paris there, and it's like, well, that can be 100-year-old. So needs a bit of time to live. So yes, that sort of thing's quite important on the woods. Oh, and there's another bit there. And then with another bit, I guess judging as to whether your woods are old or not, there's your archaeology. So this one we see here is, I think it's a peeler's hut. So they would peel oak trees in the past and then send that peelings off to the tanneries. And actually it's good in a way, because this next one's a tanning barn where they would stack all the oak peeling up and then send it away, and it would be used to tan leather and things and used in industry historically. And you get the ancient woods have got sort of bits of old archaeology in them that are a sort of a nod to the past in a way. So yes, but anyway, that's a quick introduction to why ancient woods are good and important and all that. And then we have an online course which we have, I guess, prepared over the years, and Carrie will tell us a bit about that.
Thank you, Jamie. So there's a lot to think about when you're looking at managing your ancient woodlands, and when you're first also identifying your ancient woodlands. Is it ancient? Is it not? Is it important? Is it not? So we teamed up with the Woodland Trust, and on our online course now we have a comprehensive ancient woodland course you can go on for free. So this is completely free and accessible to anyone. It says continuous professional development because this has actually been pitched at the level of a professional in the National Trust and the Woodland Trust taking this course to learn how to manage ancient woodlands. But it is entirely accessible to anybody, and it'll take you through a full introduction into the course itself. So just, if I can. You can't play videos when it's in this mode. How do you do that? Is it working?
I believe my name's a big confusing, yeah?
I have no idea.
Let's have a look.
There's no play button.
Ah.
Let me go down to it this way. Just because it's nice to have something in the background. Right.
That's on the way.
That's on the way. Right. So our Ancient Woodland Restoration course is... We'll give that a minute. Anyway, we'll just leave that up. In our course, there you go. I thought it would be quite nice to have some moving images behind us while we're talking. We've got lovely introductory videos and things on the course itself. We've also got an awful lot going on in there. The first module on that course is a full introduction into what ancient woodlands are, why they're valued, why they're important, the regulations and standards that meet around woodland management, also sort of the initial what you need to think about when you first go into your woodland and what you're looking for. And the second part of the course, we have the surveys that you need to take place in your woodland. It's really important to go in there and identify what you have so that you know what happens as you're doing things and what you're going to do next. And you can also get advice on this. So that's the survey and planning phase in the second one, and also prioritising your objectives for that woodland itself or your trees. We then go into critical care management. So in some cases you go into a site and it's the pause site like we're looking at earlier with the tree that's been overtopped by conifers. You want to do something to secure what you've got before you move on to trying to make it all better. This is like a first step. So you need to think about this in phases. It's very, very different to going into a young woodland that can react really quickly to what you're doing with your management. You really need to step back and think about the vulnerabilities also of those trees themselves and what's going on in that woodland itself. So the first thing you want to do is critical care management, first aid. You're going in there, you do your first steps just to secure what you have. And then you're looking at the next step, which is securing the wider woodland area. So you're thinking about everything else that's in there, what's joined up in that woodland. You're starting to think about what species are growing in that woodland. So you're not just trying to make the stuff that's there resilient, you're now thinking about all the things that are around it, what you're going to do next. So these, at that point, once you have secured the area, and I'm not saying this happens straight away, I'm saying this could be decades for that point just to secure your wider woodlands. Trees exist at a completely different timescale to how we exist. And we need to remember that when we're working with them, especially the older trees that have been around far longer than we have and are far more vulnerable than any younger tree would be. So you're looking at securing your wider woodland area, you're looking at management planning that works across the whole woodland. It looks at threats in that woodland that are still existing even if you've done your critical care management. Maybe you took your rhododendron out, maybe that was taken over. You got rid of that, but maybe there are other things now coming in that you need to think about. Is the brambles stopping the trees coming up? Is there something about, we still got pressure from deer coming in on the woodlands? A bit of black spring for a second. Then after that we're looking at the maximising the ecological integrity. Wonderful words. You're looking at the ecology of the site, everything that's happening, everything that's working together within that site and around those trees. So we're talking all the species that are associated with it, all the animals, the flora, the fauna, everything. And you're looking at how can we make this resilient to a point where it can look after itself. So while you're securing your wider woodland, you are still managing that woodland itself, and you're still actively involved in that woodland management. But at some point you want to get to a point where it can be resilient on its own. And I'm not saying this will happen in your generation. This is the thing. This is a very, very long-term trajectory to anything that you're doing. And it's very, very complex as well. So, as part of this course, we take you through those 3 phases. And then following that, we look at management opportunities and interventions. And as part of that, it could also be non-interventions, active non-intervention, where you're not doing something somewhere on purpose. But you really need to think about that before you decide not to do something. Because quite often these places are so heavily managed that they're used to being managed. And it's all kind of imbalanced there with you doing something in there. It's very difficult, very tricky, and it involves a lot of sensitivities. So, I'll just pop this back up a second, if it'll work. As part of this course, some of you guys might recognise this person here. It's Maurice Pankhurst, and he managed the Borrowdale Ancient Woodlands for a couple of decades. He's the person that is a go-to for any of that information. We've managed to get Maurice on camera talking to us about the Borrowdale Oaks and about the work that they've done there to join up 2 huge, great woodland areas as well. And I highly recommend, even if you just don't want to do the course, you go on and watch these videos, flick through to the bits you want to have a look at. That's what it's there for. It's about sharing information, engaging everybody in the kind of woodland that you need in your ancient woodland sites. So we have people from Natural England, National Trust at the time was Maurice Pankhurst, Woodland Trust. Of course, they were partners in this project as well. And alongside that, we also have some really interesting case studies. So if you want to learn a bit more about what you're doing, you might want to look about what happened elsewhere. This is Arcaig in Scotland. Loch Arcaig is up northwest Scotland. This is a Scots pine. It is, or was, an ancient, it was a veteran tree within the woodland. And this is what I'm talking about, taking baby steps when you are managing ancient woodlands. What happened here is they cut out too many trees around it to start with. We call this halo management. Taking a halo of trees out to help start to release that overtopping canopy of the conifers and moving them out the way, to allow the ancient tree itself or the veteran tree itself to flourish and grow. They took too many out, and in response to that, it just died. And this happens a lot because the first thing people want to do is go in and take all the conifers out from every ancient tree that you've got in there, and that's what you're left with, is trees that don't survive. So what they've done is they have left these pollards, and they've left this as a demonstration site, because that's a standing dead tree and it'll be standing dead for a long time up there. And they're taking people out there to show them exactly what happens when things go wrong. And it's okay when things go wrong to tell people and to talk about it, because that's how we learn. So that's a Woodland Trust site up at Loch Arcaig, and I think it's absolutely fantastic that they've done this, and they do various trips of theirs to talk about that. The next thing, I'm just going to put something up in the background, which means I have to end the slideshow and press play again. So give me a second. We love technology, don't we, when we're out in a tent? This is how this works. Alright, there we go. So as part of this course, we were lucky enough to also have an animation put together, a piece of information, just to show those phases of management and what are happening within it. And it just takes you through. So I'm just going to leave that on in the background. We've got no sound in here, but if you go onto the course itself, you can press play on the course button and this will come up. And it just sort of illustrates what's going on where you've got all your conifers here. This is typical Sitka spruce, if anybody recognises it. And just the vulnerabilities of the trees within there and what is actually going on in our UK woodlands right now and what we need to think about as we're moving forward. Alongside this course, we are now also doing face-to-face courses, Jamie and I. Jamie puts together management for, he talks Ancient Woodlands for people for us and Woodland Trust, and we can talk you through the phases of what you need to do in a woodland. So we've actually started to do these. We've got 3 courses. Ooh, 2 of them are coming up. Well, one of them's coming up next week, on the 21st.
I think so.
And that's managing the threats to pause. And I'll get Jamie to tell you what's where we're going to go for that one actually in a minute. But that will look at pause management, invasive species, the processes, the critical care processes, the first steps that you need to take whenever you go into your site. And that's, I mean, it's very typical of the type of sites that you're going to find in particularly in around Cumbria, actually, because we have a lot of that. As part of this is fun, isn't it? Going backwards and forwards between things. I don't think there's much left. Oh, there we go. Let's have a nice picture with the management plan. Fact. We'll end on that picture. There.
Right.
There we go. So, aside from the resources that we have online and our face-to-face courses that if you want to learn more about, if you go over to the Cumbria Woodlands side over there, I haven't got the leaflets with me, but you've got the email address on the back of the leaflets there and the website address. You can go on there and find out more information in that. Our online resources also contain some higher education institute resources that were put together particularly for the universities and in partnership with the universities, so in conversation with universities. But that is also accessible. There are 20 site case studies on there that you can go on and read, so you can see what people are doing at real sites around Cumbria and across and around the rest of the UK as well. Learn a bit more about the sites, and it's just got some nice information. So you can see what's going on those sites and what they've chosen to do. And there's also some expert conversations on there, which is a series of videos, people talking about things like ash dieback in Ancient Woodlands and all those other little bits and pieces that you need. People from the Forestry Commission, National Trust, different folk. I absolutely recommend going on and using it. It's all completely free, so going on there, using that resource while it's available. Jamie, do you want to tell them what we're doing next week?
Well, can do, or in the future. Yes, so we've put together a handful of courses, 3, and yes, we'll just sort of look at the different, well, I guess first course is about what's there, and each Ancient Woodland will have different things in it, so that's sort of a key thing. The next one is about, so you maybe do a survey whilst you're on that first one and have a look and see what there is. The next one is about how you get into action in terms of what you might actually be doing, and sort of planning for it, because each wood again will be different. And the third one is sort of managing the threats to the wood. So I guess some of them do have more threats than others, and this particular course that we were going to do next week is at Thirlmere, where some of you were actually earlier this week having a look around. And yeah, there's just different sort of threats to consider, and we were looking out across some of the sort of conifer sites. And there's challenges and that need sort of a bit of addressing, so lots of opportunity with that. But I guess key thing is to sort of go steady away at it, have a look around. It's not going to sort of change overnight, but you probably do need to do something in these woods, and that's sort of the takeaway message really. So yes, grand. Out else, any other questions do you think? Are you about done, Carrie?
I think I'm done.
Magic. Right,
Yeah,
any
good
questions
question.
from anyone? Oh, just clapping. Clapping will do. Go on, clapping and then questions. They might not go on.
Identifying things, little things.
Aye.
The herbs, the stuff on the ground.
Yeah.
On the trees. These new apps, what do they work? Are they
So,
with a Pinterest?
Can you just repeat the question into the mic?
aye, so the query there is identifying things on the new apps, and as in on the telephone. Now, my normal telephone is a Nokia, but I do have a future phone as well, but I don't quite use the app things yet. But the ID thing is, it's yes, they're all right for some things, but I wouldn't trust them. Maybe you need to check as well in a book or actually learn like a bit more about it, because maybe sometimes they work, but sometimes they definitely don't. So we went into a wood in January, February, and we looked at something and we're like, oh, what's that seedling? It looked a bit like a beech seedling with its two sort of, I had two lobes on it, and it's like, well, what's that then? Carried on going, come back 6 months later and it's full of Himalayan balsam, and it's like, well, the app didn't tell us that. So, and it's like, well, actually we would have had time to do something about that if we'd picked it up, and the app didn't tell us that. So, yes, told us it was something else completely different. But there we are. So yeah, don't trust them 100%. Right. Out else?
I recommend the Field Studies Council publications
Yeah.
for identifying
Those
ancient-
fold out ones.
Yeah,
it's all laminated.
really good start for taken out.
So in case you didn't hear that, recommendation for the Field Studies Council folding things. Aye, they're good. Aye.
And just to say that the first course that we have, the introduction, will have a little bit of identification stuff in it as well. So we'll show you what you can use using the Field Study Council stuff. That won't take place until next spring because of the flora. We really want to have it there when we're doing it, so it's well worth waiting for that one. Yeah. Anybody else for any questions before we have to quit?
Are you going to stay around a bit?
Yes, we'll be here for a while if anybody wants to just mill around and chat all the time. Thank you.
Thank you. Well done.